What if the villains were never wrong? What if the characters we were told to fear, to boo, to root against, what if they were the only ones in the room telling the truth? Hear me out. We grow up watching animated movies with a very simple promise. The hero is good. The villain is bad. Cheer for the hero, fear the villain. That's the deal. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Some of those villains, they had a point. A real, uncomfortable, undeniable point. And the movie never actually proved them wrong. It just distracted us with a chase scene. Today we are going 4 rounds deep. 4 animated villains who were not evil because they were broken or jealous or power-hungry for no reason. They were evil because the world they lived in was already broken, and they were the only ones brave enough to say it out loud. By the time we are done, you are going to look at least one of these characters completely differently, maybe all of them. Let's get into it. Syndrome, The Incredibles. Let's start with the one that hits hardest, because Syndrome from The Incredibles is not just a villain who had a point. He is a villain whose entire plan was a direct response to a society that failed him. Quick setup for anyone who needs it. Buddy Pine is a kid, a regular, powerless, brilliant kid who idolizes Mr. Incredible. He builds rocket boots. He shows up at the superhero's door and says, "Take me with you. Let me be your sidekick. I want to help. I want to be part of this." And Mr. Incredible turns him away. Not gently, not with kindness, dismissively, almost with contempt. "You are not special. You do not have powers. Go home." That moment breaks Buddy Pine, and from that moment, Buddy Pine stops being a fan and starts being a mission. Years later, he becomes Syndrome. He dedicates his entire life to technology, to invention, to proving that power does not have to come from genetics. He builds weapons that can match supers. He builds a robot that can defeat supers. And his endgame? Release the technology to everyone. Make superpowers available to every single person on the planet. His famous line, and it is genuinely one of the most philosophically loaded lines in any animated film ever made, is this: "When everyone is super, no one will be." Now the movie frames this as evil. Syndrome is the bad guy. He is unhinged. He is dangerous. He kills people. He is clearly not someone to root for in terms of method. But let's separate the method from the message, because the message is actually a critique of the entire premise of the movie. The Incredibles is fundamentally a film about a family of people who are born with extraordinary gifts and are told to hide them so that ordinary people do not feel bad. That is the conflict. Supers have to live mediocre lives to protect the feelings of non-supers. Syndrome points this out. He says the system you all worship is built on birthright. You are celebrated not because of what you do, not because of what you build, not because of who you are as a person, but because of what you were given before you could even walk. And the movie never actually refutes this. It just asks you to feel uncomfortable about Syndrome and ignore the argument. Bob Parr spends the entire film desperate to return to the era when supers were celebrated and above the law. He wants the old days back, the days when being born special made you untouchable. He is literally nostalgic for a social hierarchy based on genetic privilege. Syndrome looks at that same nostalgia and says no. If everyone has access to the same tools, the same technology, the same capability, then achievement becomes about effort, about intelligence, about dedication, not about DNA. That is not a villain's philosophy. That is actually closer to a meritocratic ideal than anything Mr. Incredible ever stood for. Now again, Syndrome's methods are horrific. He creates a monster to terrorize a city so he can swoop in and save the day. He kills people. He is willing to endanger lives for publicity. There is no defending what he does. But here is the question the movie never dares to ask out loud. Is the world Syndrome is fighting against actually just? A world where people with genetic gifts get to be heroes and everyone else has to get out of the way. Is that a world worth protecting? The movie says yes because the Parr family is charming and the action sequences are great and the music is incredible. But it never actually makes the philosophical case. It just makes you love the protagonist and hate the antagonist. Syndrome was right that the system was broken. He was wrong about how to fix it. But the movie treated his diagnosis as the problem, when really it was his prescription. That is a big difference. And it is one that holds up every single time you rewatch The Incredibles as an adult. Anton Ego, Ratatouille. Now let's talk about Anton Ego. And this one is fascinating because Anton Ego does not start out right. He starts out wrong. But then he transforms in the third act into someone who is completely, beautifully, uncomfortably correct. And then the world punishes him for it. Anton Ego is the most feared food critic in Paris. His reputation is devastating. When he gives a restaurant a bad review, that restaurant dies. He is thin, pale, lives in a coffin-shaped office, and is introduced as a man who does not like food and does not like people who like food. He is framed as pure negativism walking around in a suit. For most of Ratatouille, he functions as the looming threat, the external pressure, the personification of a world that would never accept a rat cooking in a kitchen. And then he shows up at Gusteau's, and Remy cooks him ratatouille, a peasant dish, the simplest, most humble food imaginable. And it transports him. It sends him back to childhood, to his mother's kitchen, to a moment of pure comfort and love and home. That scene is one of the greatest animated sequences ever made. But what follows it is equally important and far less celebrated. Ego writes his review, and the review is extraordinary. He calls out everything wrong with his own profession. He admits that the work of a critic is easy in a way that creation is not. He says that the world is often unkind to new talent, new creations. He acknowledges that in the grand scheme of things, a critic's negative word means less than the tiniest spark of creative achievement in the person who creates. He validates Remy completely. He tells Paris that the best meal he has had in years was cooked by someone who would conventionally be unacceptable to the establishment. And what happens? The restaurant gets shut down because a rat was found in the kitchen. Health inspectors come. Gusteau's is over. And Anton Ego, who staked his professional credibility on this review, who put his name and his reputation behind the statement that this restaurant served the finest food in France, he is discredited. He loses his job. He loses his platform. He told the truth and the world dismantled him for it. Now here is what makes Ego's arc so powerful and so underappreciated. He was wrong at the beginning, not morally, but professionally. He had calcified. He had become the thing critics always risk becoming, someone who judges rather than experiences, someone whose expertise became a wall rather than a door. He put his career on the line because he encountered something true and beautiful, and he refused to lie about it. That is integrity. That is exactly what criticism is supposed to be at its best. And Ratatouille quietly, almost cruelly, shows you what happens to people with integrity when they exist in systems built on comfort and consensus. They lose. They get removed. They end up running a small bistro on the outskirts, quietly happy but professionally erased. The movie gives Ego a happy ending in the last few seconds. He is shown enjoying himself at Remy's small restaurant. He is smiling. He has found something real. But the film never quite reckons with what it cost him to be right. It treats his fall from power as a natural consequence rather than an injustice. The system that punished him for telling the truth gets no real examination. Ego was right. He was more right than almost any other character in that film, and the movie rewards him with a tiny table at a secret restaurant instead of asking why honesty destroyed his career. The dragon, Shrek. This one is different. The dragon in Shrek is not given monologues. She does not have a grand philosophy. She does not sit in a dark room writing reviews or building robots. She is chained to a tower and she breathes fire, and the movie frames her as an obstacle. But look at her situation from her own perspective for a moment, and it becomes one of the most disturbing setups in any animated movie. Dragon is a guardian. She has been placed, presumably not voluntarily, at the top of a tower in the middle of a lake of lava to guard a princess. She is chained. She is isolated. She has presumably been there for years, maybe longer. There is no indication anyone has been kind to her, shown her affection, treated her as anything other than a monster serving a function. Lord Farquaad sends knights to retrieve Princess Fiona. We see what happens to them. Dragon defends her tower. She does what she was placed there to do. She is operating exactly within the role she was assigned. Then Shrek and Donkey show up. Donkey, through sheer accidental charm and relentless persistence, breaks through her walls. She falls in love with him. She shows vulnerability and affection and warmth. All things the movie has been suggesting monsters cannot feel. She releases Shrek. She saves the day at the end of the film. The movie treats this as a comedic subplot. Dragon loves Donkey. Very funny. Big reveal. Happily ever after. But nobody in the film ever asks, what was Dragon's life before this? Who put her there? Was she ever consulted? Was the arrangement she was living in, chained, alone, burning any human who came close, was that actually her choice? Dragon in Shrek represents every powerful creature, every strong and feared being, who is placed into a role of pure utility without any consideration for their inner life. She is not a villain. She is not even really an antagonist once you spend more than 30 seconds thinking about her situation. She is a prisoner who has been so effectively contained that she has become the thing the world needed her to be, a monster, without ever having any say in it. And when she finally acts on something genuine, when she acts on love and connection and loyalty, when she swoops in and destroys Farquaad, the movie plays it for a laugh. Donkey is surprised. Fiona is grateful. Shrek is relieved. Dragon gets a wedding cameo. The character whose entire arc is about breaking out of imposed identity, about discovering that the monster everyone feared had a beating heart inside. She ends up as a background character in the celebration of the very freedom she helped create. What Dragon was right about, even without words, even without argument, is this. The world will define you as the monster and chain you to the role, and it will never apologize when it turns out you were something more. You have to break free yourself, and even then, the world moves on faster than it ever stopped to see you. Dragon lived that truth. The movie just did not build enough of the film around it to let audiences feel the full weight of what she represented. Hades, Hercules. Now we get to Hades. And Hades is probably the most legitimately wronged character on this entire list because the injustice he is dealing with is baked into the structure of the world before the movie even begins. Quick mythology refresh filtered through the Disney version. The Olympian gods rule the world. Zeus is king. He sits on Mount Olympus, throws parties, gets celebrated, lives in literal paradise. And Hades. Hades runs the underworld. He manages the dead. He presides over the realm of souls that never leave. Now, in Greek mythology, this division is presented as relatively neutral. The underworld is not hell. Hades is not the devil. He is just the god of the dead, a necessary function, not a moral judgment. Disney made Hades the villain, and by doing so, the film quietly embedded an enormous piece of theological and political commentary that it never intended to fully examine. Think about Hades' actual complaint. He did not choose to run the underworld. The Titans were defeated. The world was divided. Zeus got the sky, light, glory, celebration, worship. Poseidon got the sea, vast, powerful, adventurous. And Hades got the dead, the darkness, the shadows, the place no living thing wants to go. He did not apply for the job. He was assigned it. While Zeus throws parties on Olympus and gets shrines built in his honor by grateful mortals. And when Hades raises one actual objection, when he pursues one actual plan to change the arrangement, the film treats him as pure evil. His plan is to release the Titans, overthrow Zeus, and take control of Olympus. That is undeniably dangerous and violent. But look at what he is reacting to. He is reacting to an eternity of thankless, joyless, dark labor in a realm nobody wants to visit, while the golden child up top gets everything and gives nothing back. The film goes even further in validating Hades without meaning to. The gods of Olympus are shown to be vain, petty, status-obsessed, and fundamentally unconcerned with the mortals they are supposedly protecting. The whole Hercules situation, the reason the movie exists, begins because Zeus and Hera had a son that Hades saw as a threat. The divine politics that created this conflict are not Hades' fault. Hades also functions as the most competent character in the movie. He is organized, he plans, he delegates. He runs an operation that processes every soul that has ever died across all of human history. That is not nothing. That is an incomprehensible amount of administrative and metaphysical work. And he does it mostly alone, with two sidekicks who are useless and a power that flares up uncontrollably when he gets emotional. A detail the film plays for laughs, but that actually underscores how little control he has even over himself. Hades' methods are dangerous. He is willing to endanger innocent people to achieve his goals. That cannot be justified. But his fundamental grievance, that the structure of the world he was placed into is deeply unfair, that he has been given the worst assignment and expected to perform it with gratitude while others reap all the glory. That grievance is legitimate. And here is the part that stings. The film ends with Hercules choosing to stay mortal, choosing love over Olympus, choosing the human world over divine glory. The film frames this as beautiful, but nobody stops to say, if Zeus loved his son so much, if the gods of Olympus are so noble and good, why did they not intervene in Hades' obviously miserable existence at any point over the course of eternity? Why does the solution to the Hades problem involve stopping his rebellion rather than asking whether the arrangement that created his rebellion was just? Hades was never going to win. The narrative structure of the movie would not allow it, but he was right that something was fundamentally broken in the world he inhabited. He just lacked the power to fix it through any means other than destruction. And that gap between a legitimate grievance and an unacceptable method is exactly where Hades lives. Right at the edge of sympathy. Too far to root for, but too understandable to dismiss. So here is where we land. Syndrome diagnosed a broken meritocracy. He was right. His solution was wrong. Anton Ego told the truth about genius and criticism. He was right. The world punished him for it. The dragon broke free from an identity imposed without consent. She was right. The film barely acknowledged what she overcame. Hades rejected an unfair cosmic arrangement he never chose. He was right. The story was never going to let him win. What connects all four of these characters is not that they were good people. They were not, or at least not entirely. What connects them is that the worlds they inhabited had real problems, real injustices, real hypocrisies, real inequalities. And the so-called heroes of those stories never actually solved those problems. The heroes just won. They overcame the immediate threat. The credits rolled. And the underlying issues that created the villain in the first place, those just got to keep existing. Quietly, unexamined, ready to produce the next villain in the next sequel. That is the uncomfortable thing about these stories when you watch them as an adult. The villain is not always wrong. Sometimes the villain is just the only character honest enough to name the problem, with no good options left for how to solve it. Next time you rewatch any of these films, watch the villain's first scene. Listen to what they are actually saying, not how they say it. That will always be sinister, that is by design. But what they are saying, you might be surprised how often you agree.